So once again, I'm playing this game under protest. He did say to me, well, we're going to give you some more time because I think, sadly, as everybody knows, I have stretch marks on my tongue. I try to discuss too many things. When you got a room full of so much low-hanging fruit that I know you can help things I need help on, it's hard not to want to convey the request. But after he said you'll have that time, he then comes to see me with Mark and says, okay, well, before you do whatever you're going to talk about, bring a bunch of stuff from your shop, put it all on a bunch of tables, and tell people about it. So I'm going to do that, but is that your time or mine? So I also thought if I bring anything very sophisticated from my shop, it would really make it hard to get to the serious groveling and begging that I want to do in those areas that I hope you'll help me particularly with first. So I brought some stuff that I thought would be relevant to some of the things we do, but would be sort of self-explanatory. We got somebody with a camera to look at this close up. Wow. This is a model. You may not think this is all that special. Some of you probably think you could probably build a better little wooden model. What makes this one special, it was built by a guy that has no arms, except the ones we put on him. I'll show you a picture of it. This is a flat plate heat exchanger, commercially available at a pretty good price. It's a piece of one. Weighs about 6 or 7 pounds. It takes a stack of well over 50 pounds of this to transfer enough heat to make one of my vapor compression distillers, our water machine, work. And it works very well. And we use them in our early machines. We use this in the machine that purified the pee that I was so kindly presented with by Richard Solwerman. The first time on one of his requests, I bought our vapor compression distiller and demonstrated that it would take anything, including his pee, and turn it into pure water, which he and I drank on stage.
No, but that's half the story. You put your pee in, too.
I only put it in so that you would show real commitment when you drank the water. You've been drinking your own pee for... But I did that. I waited until he was on stage telling the audience that he had put his pee in the water and we were going to drink it. And then I showed a video of my returning the favor. And, and he did drink it.
We're bonded. He drank it, too.
And I bring that, and then I would remind you that a long time ago I was told by one of the best engineers I ever met as a young guy who said to me, Dean, you know what a really great engineer is? It's somebody that can do for $2 what any bum can do for 10. And in that original machine, and the machines that we've had running, that's a major piece of expense because heat exchangers are built for standard classic performance, high pressures and high temperatures and high flows. We recognize that we uniquely are trying to do things at very low temperature, at very low pressure, in very controlled conditions, and we realized we could essentially take bunches of extruded copper, make what appears to be a nearly infinite length of counterflow heat exchanger, put it in a tube, wrap it around the rest of the machine so it doesn't take any room, and replace all of them for under $50, which is going to matter, as you'll see, to where I want to put these machines. And we've done that over the last few years. As you'll see, we haven't made a lot of progress putting machines in the field, but we've made a lot of progress technically making them more capable. Richard also said, well, since you make all these cool parts that you're literally growing in your shop, show some of them. Well, the way we made this after doing some extrusions and other things is we literally grew out of a medical grade nylon these pieces, so we didn't have to make any tooling. And they make all the seals and they make everything run, and they're interesting. Since I was told we need to do an upgrade or an update on the arm, as Hugh says, these things keep getting better. I don't know where Hugh is, but I'm already jealous. I think you said that with one stroke you could stiffen your limb, which is Anyway, so the arm that you saw last year Jesse wearing and Chuck wearing was made out of aluminum, very lightweight. We wanted more strength. We wanted a higher performance one, and since I was required that we need to show new stuff, I'm not going to show you more videos. I'm not going to say a lot more about that project today, but this is a very intricate piece of the next generation of arm. What's interesting about it is it's really lightweight, really strong. It's made out of titanium, and not a machinist in the world had to touch it. This was grown on a 3D printer that now has the capacity to print titanium. That means we can custom make these things no matter what the size and shape of our users. This is a 3D printing operation. It's sort of done the same way as you print in plastics. You just multiply by about 1,000 the energy that goes into it, and you sinter at a few thousand degrees pure titanium. Since I think I'm going to run way short, I'll simply tell you, for our ability to make electricity anywhere in the world off cow dung, we made a very high-performance Stirling generator, the heater head of which, again, is made out of a very exotic material. The top of this thing sits at nearly 2,000 degrees, and there's a rubber O-ring on the bottom that you could hold while it's operating. The pin-fin heat exchanging technology of this, most people have told us it's pretty hard to do. On the outside of a single piece like this that's got 3,000 psi of helium inside, our answer is, if you think that's hard, they're on the inside too. And the way we make them is carbon electrodes, go in, burn them, and once we prove that they work, get some light in there. Once we prove that they work, the problem is, great, how do you make enough of them? Because you certainly can't do them with carbon electrodes, the negative of that shape, in high production volume. We've actually figured out a way to do that, but based on that clock, some other time. I really do have a day job. I never talk about my day job stuff at all the TEDMEDs because I don't need your help for that. I'm going to show you a part that we designed a long time ago when the world said it was impossible to take thin, flexible, 10 mil thick pieces of plastic and attach them in a sterile environment to a rigid, heavy structure. And in this, there's enough pumping capacity, just using pneumatics, to move liters per minute, and valving to do all sorts of things and get extraordinary precision control of fluid flow, measuring it, controlling it, keeping it clean. Last year we shipped, or our partner for this project shipped their 200 million therapy in home dialysis with this. But the reason that the core technology of this is here today is because I'm using it for something else that I hope you'll all agree is pretty interesting. And Richard, since you said you want people to be excited and paying attention, I brought a stick of dynamite. This is a stick of dynamite, so please be careful. Fortunately, I fly my own plane and I have a different standard than TSA. It's not very dangerous like this. If I put this clip on it, it's still not very dangerous because the clip only holds the blasting cap. This is the blasting cap. Richard, for both of our sake,
Don't move.
be very careful. Very careful. So, I figured I couldn't pull a cockroach out of my pocket. I tell you what I'm going to do. I hope. I'll do that part later. The guy you saw last year doing all sorts of things with our prosthetic arm was wearing a pretty big device around his ankle, a lot of stuff on it. We did have some control systems that use ways directly to get signals from the brain, but we have over time become more and more convinced that, at least in the short run, non-invasive, simpler ways to interface would be a good idea, and we took multiple axis gyros, accelerometers, radios, DSPs, and packaged them all into this. And this device, when you see some of what's going on there with a guy playing with dynamite, is just sitting a couple of these on his shoes, and this is a completely finished version of the control system. As I said, it's multi-axis gyros, accelerometers, radios, and the complete interface to that prosthetic device.
I press?
You can, but nothing will happen. I'm not wearing the arm.
Oh, but this is where you press.
That would turn it on.
Huh.
I have one more bright idea. Mark, can you help me with this? Nope. I guess I didn't need your help. Okay, we'll get back to this later. Do I get a clicker? So I'll also warn you, normally I can just tell my story about what my subject is, but I have 3 subjects. Little follow-up on the arm, what's going on with our water project, and of course FIRST. And in listening to what was going on and understanding that in the world of medicine, everybody's concerned about a whole lot of things, like cost and availability, and listening to all the speakers who I think are here to solve problems, I figured I'd start with a quote and hopefully weave it through a couple of these issues, the arm, water, and FIRST. But I've never tried to do that before, so I may be even more incoherent than ever. I apologize. But intellectuals solve problems. I think that's almost an obvious statement, and most of us, I think, try to be good intellectuals, try to solve problems. And I think most of us, rightly or wrongly, think we're probably better at it than most of the world. And if you look around the world, that's kind of easy to believe. However, one of my heroes, Albert Einstein, made the following observation about 70 years ago. Intellectuals solve problems. Geniuses prevent them. You heard one of the speakers yesterday point out that 75% of all healthcare costs in the United States is for the treatment of chronic disease. It's then funny that all of our guys that do analysis with excruciating accuracy and precision, but hilariously short on vision, predict whether it's in 2020 or 2030 or 2040 or 2050, we're all going to be bankrupt and we're all going to be in terrible shape because of the cost of health care. I'd imagine those same people sat around while they were solving the problem of putting people in iron lungs because of the massive polio epidemics that were rolling through. But in the 1920s or 30s or 40s, I'd imagine if they had computers to run the models that they run now, they would have predicted we'd all be bankrupt now because of the critical diseases that were going to wipe us all out, like smallpox and typhoid and polio. And we all know today that 30% of all the chronic healthcare spending in the United States this year was a direct result of diabetes, either the diabetes care itself or all the insidious long-term effects of diabetes, like porphyria disease, microangiography, end-stage renal failure, 30%. So they want to project that in 2050, with 50 million people having diabetes, we'll all be bankrupt by that 30%. That's the same people that would have bankrupted us by putting everybody in iron lungs in 1930. But when they project forward, they forgot Jonas Salk came along in the middle, and for $2, kids today have never even heard of polio, and they're not particularly afraid of it. Does anybody in this room believe we're not going to come up with a prevention for some of these major diseases, never mind chronic cure, treatments, you have to be pretty skeptical. So they will be, with great precision, I think very wrong about what the crisis is in 2050, because I think geniuses will, from time to time, come along. In that regard, I'm going to try to take the 3 projects. I'm no genius, so we mostly spend that time on solutions, giving people arms. But I want to project, hopefully, with maybe the prospect of getting some support, that we can all move from solving problems to preventing them. Obviously, you prevent them in medical care, and it's a huge win on all cost and everything else. If you can prevent problems in other areas, education, war, I think preventing a war is to me, way more valuable than winning one. So I'm going to try to stick with the word solutions and preventions and talk now about arms, water, and power. It was Albert Einstein that said that, by the way. He's a very credible guy. Not around, unfortunately, but the arm. We made a solution. We're proud of that solution. It was a lot of work. I'm not going to spend more time on it, but I'll show you. These are 2 guys that are shaking hands with our solution. That is Chuck. That's a picture of him sitting after a couple of days. He built this. In what way could that technology be better than a solution to one of the now nearly 2,000 soldiers that's running around without an arm? Dynamite. We have a problem. The market for building those arms for these kids that need them is small enough that I have been unable so far to find any major medical products company that has both the resources and interest in fulfilling that need. It's not unreasonable, their business. We've built now a couple of dozen. We have clinical trials going, but I've got to get these things made. Well, find another application for it that will create a business opportunity attractive to people with the skill sets. And more than that, listen to Big Al. What if the arms could be used not as a solution to a problem, but for prevention? Turns out that gold, now at well over $1,200 an ounce, gold, these days, they get it by sending people into mines with sticks of dynamite and fuses, and since they don't want to be blown up there, they give them their detonators, they go down, they place them, and every once in a while, they don't place them right. You don't want to know how many hundreds of people last year lost, just even to the blasting cap, limbs. So we've been working with a company, one of the largest gold mining operations in the world, and said, what if we could solve that problem and keep the arms on these guys? So I have a little video of that. Oh, sorry. Can you go back and play that video? I should have done that already. And this is one of our engineers just wearing an exoskeleton, demonstrating, I guess, are we going to play that video? Oh. He's wearing, the guy standing on that side is manipulating that thing. We put it on an ibot base. He's now going to go over and take the similar stick of dynamite. He's going to take the clip. We have one of these in a mile, nearly a mile underground, and the guy's wearing stereo vision. He literally takes a number of these, as I said, in South Africa. He puts them into holes that had been drilled when it was safe, because there was no dynamite down there. Watch this. He takes the, oh, there he goes. He takes that cord, he'll grab it between 2 of his fingers. I'd ask the people in the audience to try this, it's not easy. He's going to attach the clip to that. Then he's going to attach the blasting cap to that. And if all goes wrong down there, which it sometimes does, we lose a piece of junk, not a human being. So that might be an example of a prevention rather than a solution. Maybe by next year I'll give you some real pictures. Since I was also told you have to show new stuff, this is one of the actual arms. It's not exactly perfect. The next generation, the shoulder is literally small enough that it looks organic. The hand is much smaller. It's got loads of improvements, twice the speed. There's lots of stuff. I'll show you a picture of it. And we're hoping maybe by next year, I'll have one for you. That's if you invite me back. Water, before we can go to solutions or preventions, state the problem. I know we're here talking about health care, but to put the water problem in context, I'll make it simple. You add up every disease you've been hearing people talk to you about, all the cancers, every kind that terrify us. Add to them all of heart disease. You heard it's our #1 killer. Add to that diabetes, it's out of control. Add to that Alzheimer's and everything else you've heard about so far. If you add all of those diseases together, everyone you can name, they constitute 50% of all chronic human illness. Drinking bad water all by itself is the other half. Not in this country. But if you were a pure game theory person looking to optimize value, and you wanted to rid the world of human misery, I think you'd all say, well, let's take the low-hanging fruit first. Let's just give everybody clean water, and 50% of the hospital beds around the world would be empty, and people would be productive. Sounds easy. So that's the problem. By the way, the 2 million people it kills every year are mostly kids. This is the way it looks in a lot of places of the world, and this is the kind of water people need to drink. You don't drink a little water every day, you die. You can fix this water. You can fix it the way we do in the developed world with massive systems. They're not available in the developing world. If you wanted to fix that particular water in the developing world, you'd be in trouble because over time, the world has said, well, we know that the wells now that we've dug to get below the bioburden and floating fecal matter there, the wells we dig, for instance, in Bangladesh, 1.5 million of those wells don't have bioburden. No, they've got arsenic. You go to shallow water, you got Cryptosporidium gerardia. You get near the ocean, you can't drink it because it's salty. We'll use osmosis membranes for this. We'll use activated charcoal to pull out those ions of toxic waste. We'll use chlorine to kill the body. Well, where are they going to get all these things? At the local 7-Eleven at the corner? Where are they going to build the giant systems? The big global organizations, at least since World War II for 60 years, have been working on solving the world's water problem. They know how bad it is. They've spent well over $1 trillion. There's no country in the world where you can show the great success. A 19th century mind dealing with the 21st century problem is probably not going to get there in the next 60 years. So we thought technology is the answer. And all people want is this. Not that complicated. This, the solution to what you saw there, as proposed by big global organizations, is that. So all we have to do is go to where those 2 billion people live, where there's no infrastructure, and build this stuff. All we got to do is operate it. All we have to have is sophisticated engineering. It's not going to happen in your lifetime or mine. There's a model. The developing world latched onto cell phones, even though they never quite latched onto Ma Bell, because the village phone lady. You all know those stories, Grameen Bank, et cetera. So I thought, what if we could make portable water and portable power at the point of use model and let local people do it? So rather than this solution, we spent more than now a decade building these 2 boxes. That one is a vapor compression distiller, which has a bunch of stuff, including this inside. It doesn't need any membranes or any filters or any chemicals. The goal is 1,000 liters of pure water a day, enough for 100 people for hygiene and cooking. And the goal is 5 years of operation without any major overhaul or maintenance. Small enough to put them anywhere in the world, big enough to be useful, sort of like the cell phone of utilities. We thought it would work. We thought the difficult challenge would be, could you make a vapor compression distiller that could make that much water and do it 50 times as efficient as the typical amount of energy it takes to boil and recondense water? And with a bunch of neat technology that I would love to talk to the engineering community of you about, we did that. And we've been making it better each year and simpler each year. That's about the stage that it was at when you and I toasted. It does need electricity, but a lot of places in the world have electricity, and I would love to tell you about the device next to it, that we ran 2 villages in Bangladesh and electrified them for 24 weeks, people that never had electricity, but we're really out of time. Anyway, we made this box, and we deployed them, test them. I couldn't get the support of the big organizations that I would hope would support us. I know I told you this before. If I had asked them for $15 billion in 15 years, I would have gotten some response, but I said it'd probably take a few $1 million in a few months, and who'd want to do that? So I finally just sent my own engineers down to Central America, and actually Bangladesh, and this is a little town of Lerida in Honduras. And after the machines were there for a while, every kid on the way to school would come and get water from our machine, 20 liters. It would fill 50 of those per day, and surprisingly, people down there loved clean water. So we thought, this will be easy. We'll give this machine to the people that know how to go around the world. In fact, more than they should do it like we'd all do it, because you're a caring human being. It's their job, right? The World Health Organization, the United Nations, governments, people with enlightened self-interest. Well, we went to a lot of people and asked for help, because I thought I had a whole new perspective. In fact, I was so confident that the compelling answer was, because it's small and simple and easily done like the cell phone, it'll spread like the cell phone if we could put it in production. In fact, as you can tell, because I'm a very obnoxious guy, I made a 1-page instruction sheet for this, which is now many years old. I showed this to you then, figuring it would get people's attention as to why point of view sort is a big deal, and I'll show you that instruction sheet. This is your municipal water system. It's just like that big one. And I'm sure you're all smart, sophisticated, intelligent, technically savvy people. I'm sure you could run a municipal water company if you had to. But here's the instruction sheet to run the village municipal water company. Since it doesn't care what's wrong with the water and you don't need to pre-test or post-test, we say, take the machine. It has 2 hoses on it, as you can see. Any water. Step 1, add the water. Any water. Really? Step 2, this is for the experts. See step 1. That's it. What's not required? It doesn't need any environmental engineers, civil engineers, or any other engineers, which they don't have where 2 billion people don't have water. You don't need pipelines, pretreatment, delivery systems, or municipal systems. They don't have that either. You don't need an epidemiologist, hydrologist, a microbiologist, or any other kind of ologist. They don't have a lot of those. You don't need osmosis membranes, charcoal. You don't need any of the stuff you can't buy in those places. And by the way, you don't need permits, bribery. Probably if you needed bribery, we would have gotten a better shot at it. If somebody was making money, this thing could have. But the other thing I should point out about it, besides, obviously, it's fast, if we could put them in production. It doesn't make the water just sort of potable. For the docs among you and for the big corporate medical products people, the water coming out of that machine isn't just potable. It meets the US Pharmacopoeia standard for water for injection. It's the gold standard of deionized pure water. What's not included? Well, what I thought we were missing, the local entrepreneur that'll sustain it and keep it going. And that seemed to me like that's all you need. Well, my whole analogy breaks down with the cell phone, because unlike this, which nobody in this room needs, you take for granted the water around here. The cell phone was developed by people that wanted it, and they make literally billions of them. So the development cost, putting them in production, coming down a cost curve happened because Europeans and North Americans and Japanese like cell phones. So it was only the incremental cost of the cell phone that they had to deal with to make them available as a productivity tool all around the world. And I said, that's my problem. How am I going to get these things in production and come down a cost curve? And most of all, I remembered, it's the political season, Clinton's guy said, it's the economy, stupid. Why isn't this a success? I made it work. It technically does the job. It takes less than a kilowatt. Why doesn't it work? Well, I decided, it's the distribution, stupid. I'm pretty stupid. I just thought, again, the global organizations that I thought are empowered and, in fact, energized to deal with this problem would do it. I don't think they have the mindset. So now that I have the machine, I've got to find a way to get them to 2 billion people that, frankly, most of the big medical companies that deliver healthcare to us don't go to those places. Frankly, the big organizations that deal with this problem don't seem to be very forward-thinking. But as luck would have it, remember I told you about this. I've spent 30 years of my life in my day job making stuff for medical products companies. We've gotten very good at mixing tiny amounts of fluids, milliliters, microliters, nanoliters, critical delivery of drugs, stuff like that, in sealed containers that have to be thrown away every day, so they have to be cheap. And as you know, ADD is my greatest asset. And I was lucky enough that we moved first, our finals, down to Atlanta a number of years ago, 5, 6 years ago, when we took over the Georgia Dome. There were two interesting things about Atlanta. Maybe there's others, I don't know, but there were two that were interesting to me. One, the home of the 1996 Olympics, where we now house the finals of first, the ultimate sporting event. Number two, you go down to that and you're in the shadow of a gigantic building, the name of which is CocaCola. I go to see CocaCola because they're well known to be the company that supports sports. That's what they do. They're the largest sponsor of the Olympics and have been for 88 years. I went to see them figuring they got to support the next century's great sport first, and they'll add something for us that the tech companies don't, marketing and PR. I end up in a conversation with some serious people at Coke. They say they'll help, and they tell me, we have another problem. We started as a fountain business, and we have a fountain with a couple of keys on it from the 1880s, and we went to bottles, we went to cans, but our fountain business hasn't changed much. Now we have 5 buttons on there. We have well over 100 products. We'd really like to find a way to make fountain deliver all of our products, or not even just the fountain, but imagine sort of the ultimate vending machine that you could get any product you want that you could buy in a grocery store from them. They asked if I could help. I asked, you mean, do I have the technology to do that, or do I need another partner? They're smart people. They saw what I wanted from first, and they know I'm not easy, but I can be had. So they said they'd help first, and I said, well, I got another problem. By then, I'd got to know a little about Coke, and let me give you a sense of the scale of Coke. Besides that they're, I guess, a $150 billion company here, that's only because they're one bottling company. Coke has been around 125 years, and they do bottling in 206 countries. There aren't too many Fortune 500 companies that have 100,000 people. Here's some numbers on Coke. Coca-Cola has 300,000 people in Africa. They're the largest employer in Africa. And anybody here that's ever traveled will tell you there's 2 things you can get anywhere in the world: cigarettes and Coca-Cola. So I said, well, I got this machine, but I don't have any way to get it out. I don't know if we can build a sustainable model. That's not my thing. But I've spent years talking to places like the World Bank and the United Nations and governments. And my medical products partners don't go to most of those countries. They donate drugs for them. That's fair. Maybe I'll get to those pharmaceutical giants and ask them to donate money to build machines. But you have distribution that's unrivaled by any company or any government or any NGO. I'll help you with your machines. You help me with mine. I've been talking at these things for a few years, but as I said, I never talk about my day job stuff because I'm not allowed. It's not fair. But 5 years ago, we started building their machine. This year, I can talk about it because it looks like this. And out of that machine, that touch screen, you can touch. If you hit the Coke, it'll come up Coke, and then it'll light up cherry, vanilla. Do you want sweetener or non-sweetener? Basically, you can mix and match and make any product you want. We also dramatically improved the amount of concentration you can put in to all the syrups in there, so you dramatically lower their footprint and their waste and their shipping. And they just started testing this product, and they really like it. More importantly, their customers really like it. As a result of that, their chairman invited me to go to Europe a month ago, where once every couple of years they bring together the presidents of the 206 partner bottling companies they have around the world from every country. And he said, we're going to show you a machine, but you can put your water machine next to it, and maybe we can even use it to pre-treat water so that fountain can be done in some of these places. So yes, I went to Monte Carlo, where he was holding this extravaganza meeting with some of the most, I think, passionate people around the world that have been partners with his company for well over 100 years. And they showed them the machines, and they showed them this stuff. And then on stage, behind one of those machines, we had the inside of that big, ugly box I showed you. And yeah, this is a piece of the thing that's wrapped around it now. We think we can get the cost of making this thing dramatically lower. But rather than a big, ugly box, I said, well, why don't we kind of stylize it a little? And we put it inside another box. And we asked all of his partners, would they be willing to help get these things out to the places that need them? And I'm happy to tell you today that at least a dozen of them have plans to come see us, and CocaCola has agreed that they, on this side, would help us do at least a few trials starting very early next year. So, yeah. So when they write the history books about the 20th century, it's going to be astounding that biggest healthcare company in the world. Well, anyway, it's really quite amazing. I did call a bunch of my long-term partners. Many of them were your major supporters here, and said, look, I know you don't go to most of these countries, but to do these trials, we got to build some of these machines while they're still small quantity and expensive. You know the culprits. The world-class companies that were in this room, and said, would you help us? And within a couple of days, almost every big medical products and pharmaceutical company I called said, yeah, count us in. There's 38,000 clinics around the world that have no clean water. So we're going to get this going somehow, somehow. I don't have a great business plan, but I never give up, ever.
But don't forget the little rant you gave me in New York you have to give here, even if it's 3 minutes.
Okay. I now see it's saying 0, but I got to say something about first. Can I got it.
You can say something about first, but do the rant.
It's a deal. Prevention. By the way, how do you think the water thing is not just a solution to 50% of all human disease? How do I get it to prevention? Maybe I get our government and other governments to think we should help put these machines out there, because remember, for a while, people can't go to Walmart to buy these machines. It's very hard to get distribution in Afghanistan and Iraq. So why is it prevention to give people clean water? Call me crazy. I'll show you. The seal of the United States doesn't look much different than it looked when we made it, 1789. The olive branch and the arrows. You got to have both. I'm not naive. There's a lot of bad people in this world. So in 1789, we formed the Department of War. It worked for a couple of hundred years, nearly 200 years. This country did pretty well. From time to time, we had to go to war. At the end of World War II, maybe we're more enlightened, we changed its name in 1949 to the Department of Defense. I personally think that was a good move. Maybe we'll be enlightened again sometime soon. But think about this. And again, I'm not here to make political statements, and I'm not naive. There's bad people in the world. And we have the most advanced technologies in the world. And we can put F-22s up there and B-1s up there, and we can carpet bomb a place and get all the bad guys without our guys getting hurt. Fine. I'd also like to think the world will one day be a place where the lion sleeps with the lamb. I still want to be the lion. I'm not naive. However, we are the biggest and strongest. We have all of that. And we've proven that we can build weapons of mass destruction. But after we go and we do that, these machines are small and light. What if the next day we just go litter the countryside with boxes that make clean water? Because whatever infrastructure they had, like now in Afghanistan, it's gone. And what about giving people electricity? That's what the box does. And if you give them electricity, they get knowledge, they get the internet, they hear the truth, they're educated. When moms can give their kids clean water, and they couldn't get it before, and all these boxes talk to each other and talk to us, and I mean, you never stop hearing stories now that what our soldiers over there want, the ones that I talk to every day, they say, you can't put enough armor on a Humvee. You can't protect yourself from people that are willing to kill themselves to kill you. What we love to do when we go into the villages, we bring soccer balls and candy bars. We get to know the people. They get to know us. That's how you're secure, when you can trust people and they can trust you. If soccer balls can do it, how about the two most important fundamental things people need to live? Clean water and electricity. It's way cheaper to go build a few thousand of these boxes and put them everywhere where we have people that hate us than it is to deliver wire-guided stuff. So I thought, we have a Department of Defense and we build the ultimate weapons of mass destruction. Glad we have them. Hope nobody else gets them. But how about if we build weapons of mass construction? And what if we go around the world and give everybody clean water and it says us on it, we're your friend? What, the terrorists are going to complain, foul, you're getting to know too many people, you're getting too many people. How are we going to lure them away when you're giving them light and electricity and security and water? Who has to play fair? Maybe we'll have a Department of Peace. And maybe we will prevent the wars. And by preventing the wars, we'll prevent the need for the arms, and I'll happily put myself out of business. And if we can get these water machines and these generators into high-volume production, I think we put them around the world, and there's a way better shot that a large part of 2 billion people will be our friends. Solution to education and the future of this country, which I think, this is data about this state. I want to give you your state. I can give you other states. But in California, in 1980, 10% of the general funds of the state went into education and 3% into prisons. Last year, 11% of the entire went into prisons and 8% into education. Anybody here think that's sustainable? But that's a solution to a problem. We have a lot of people that don't have skills, don't have education, don't have future, don't have hope. They're sort of along that line to the other people. Somehow we can't afford to educate them. That's 4 years, and then they start paying lots of taxes. We don't have enough money to educate everybody. We better have enough money to keep them in jail for 60 years. Or worse. What are they doing? I think the solution that is offered is as unsustainable as our healthcare solution. It's a reaction to a problem. It's not a prevention. Since I started with a quote by one of my favorite physicists, I have to give you another physicist. Again, I'm not a political guy, and I always feel like I shouldn't be saying those other things, but sorry, it's just logic. But a physicist around the turn of the 19th century made the following statement: gentlemen, we have run out of money. It is time to start thinking. That was Lord Rutherford. It's time to start thinking. It's time that our kids start thinking. So I think rather than the solution, more prisons, more low-paying jobs, why isn't the solution that we prevent that problem from happening in the first place? We heard yesterday people talk about inspiration being critical. Our little not-for-profit for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. I started in about 20 years ago. As most of you know, and I know I'm out of time, so I'll spare you, it started with 23 companies in one little school where we try to convince all kids that they could do science and technology. And it grew. And it grew. This kid is not likely to be in jail in 10 years. He's probably more likely to be working at one of the Silicon Valley companies. The data now for last year on FIRST is we had 46 cities holding regionals throughout our March Madness season, including one run in Boston with a lot of help from Mark. We had 92,000 scientists and engineers as volunteer mentors. We have 2,250 corporate sponsors. We had teams from 56 countries compete. The data that comes back from all the foundations that look at it, virtually all of them say it has had the most profound positive impact on kids' attitudes, particularly women and minorities, of any program they've ever seen. It's nearly 100% volunteer driven. That's what the pits looked like last year. So, as always, I would ask you people to help, get involved, be mentors, be sponsors. It's the only stimulus package that has any chance of generating the capacity to produce a few $1 trillion fast. But I'm not going to ask you to do that this year. I have a much more specific ask, and since I'm told that's a bad thing to do on stage, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to make an accomplice do it. You're going to do it. But over a year ago, it occurred to me we're doing pretty damn well. Almost every major technology company in the country sponsors teams. And again, every one of yours, every medical products company here is involved. Some of them are running regionals for us. I thank all of you. But what's missing from FIRST is people that aren't involved don't know who we are. So we keep growing. I mean, most people would be pretty happy with that growth, but I want it available to every kid everywhere. And over a year ago, I was thinking, with all these thousands of corporates and all this stuff, we don't have a program by which the kids can go out and spread the word. And I had one of my epiphanies. I don't have my own kids, but we play word association games, and if I say a word to you, I know what you'll all be thinking. I say Girl Scout, you say cookies. So I went and I checked on that, and it turns out that the Girl Scouts at the local level make almost all of their operating money that way. Our kids don't have the mechanism of cookies. More than that, the Girl Scouts are out there promoting what they do because it gives them a reason to run around the neighborhood. Cookies. I don't want to compare cookies to other things, and it may not be germane, it's not their central mission, but it works. First kids shouldn't be doing cookies, that's Girl Scouts. So what should First Kids do? And I couldn't imagine First Kids knocking on doors around the neighborhood saying, would you like to buy a robot? But everybody in any neighborhood, anywhere, has an affinity these days for environmentalism, for saving money. And FIRST is about technology and about how technology in many ways can be used to solve the world's problems, whether it's preventing disease or curing disease or energy. I said, we need a product that fits the environmental issue, and people will want to do it, and it'll give kids the extra discipline and effort of selling. So, with the help of some of the people in this room and some of the companies in this room, I went to a little company called Crete, who by most standards makes the world's coolest LEDs. And I asked if we could make a special deal with them. I asked their founder that question while he was judging at our new regional down in North Carolina where his plant is, and emotion takes over all these engineers. They're easy prey. And he said, sure, we'd help you. And then we said, well, the most common bulb in the world is a 60-watt bulb. We got to make something that's a direct replacement for anybody's 60-watt bulb. And what if it had a 50,000-hour life? And what if it only burns 6 or 7 watts, so it's 10 times as efficient? So even if you're buying electricity at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, if you run it like a night light, an outside light, for 8 hours a day, even if it costs $20, it would pay for itself in a year or two. And since it'll last pretty much as long as you have a house, it's good business. It's good economics. It's environmentally friendly. It's really cool. You can't buy them anywhere else yet. They're hoping to sell them at places like Walmart or Home Depot in a couple of years. They make other ones that are crummier. But they sent me some samples. And the samples were nice and bright. And by the way, come over here. They're pretty bright. And they won't burn you because they don't get warm. And they're made out of plastic. And you can throw them around. And you can screw them into any socket. But still, they'll probably cost us in the first year maybe $15. But we said, what if we package them up and we make them something that an army of 250,000 FIRST kids can go around to their neighborhood or to their companies, because companies get a payback. A lot of consumers right now might not have the funds, but all you have to do is the calculation and then say, and when I'm air conditioning, every watt I save 2.5 watts because I don't take heat load out of my building. And I said, what if we get it packaged up, but still if they're $15, how much can the kids make? And it's going to be hard to sell it for much over 20. And then I found that there's a federal law that says for us not-for-profits, if we sell anything for over $25, you go into another category. So I think they're going to be $24.95, which is still going to be cheaper than you'll get them for at least the next few years. But they'll come down a cost curve. But I don't want to wait for them to come down. We want to be first. So not to embarrass one of your good companies, but there's a little startup out here in California. Some of you have heard of them. It's called Google. And they're doing pretty well. And they're interested in the environment. And I think Lori Park is here, and she helped us with some people. And we said to Google, we want the kids to go through the effort of having to sell this and have to explain it. We want them to promote FIRST in their community. We want them to make enough money to support their team, but there's got to be some spread. I wonder if Google would help us buy down the cost of the bulb, and they'll get one side of that box. They basically came back and said, A, we'd love to help you, don't need side, but we're going to put it there somewhere. We want that association. And they just sent us $3 million. So we just ordered a few 100,000 of these, which is enough for one kid from every FIRST team to have a bulb to start their selling. And we're hoping that it's going to dramatically increase awareness about FIRST around the country and dramatically increase the ability of kids around the country to raise enough money to run teams. And it'll be part of a brighter future for everybody. And we're hoping that you will either become sponsors, buy them down, buy them, put them in your house. You've got to help FIRST. We've got to prevent the problems that are otherwise going to overrun us. This concept that we're going to keep trying to cure them, we're like the guy putting the thumb in the dike. Not just the medical dike, but the environmental dike, the political dike, the energy dike. We've got to create a generation of Americans that will take a leadership in solving the problems that we have to solve, but almost more importantly, becoming the geniuses that prevent the problems that are otherwise going to put us all in an ugly space. Sadly, there aren't that many people in this world that have the resources or vision to change the world. A lot of them use those resources and vision to change it in a way which benefits them and isn't even neutral on the rest of the world. And we've seen the results of that. Get involved with FIRST, and you won't be sorry, and you may help change the future in a really big way. You started this.
We will make sure that this community knows how to get these.
Thank you.
Okay.
I will say one thing. One more thing.
Okay.
You started this yesterday with a fantastic poet who you are going to make sure comes to the finals and does the same thing in front of my 72,000 people.
Absolutely.
I don't know where he is, but I'd like his commitment.
Seiko and Steve? Is that
Yeah.
what you mean? Where's Seiko and Steve?
April 28th and 29th. Thank you for agreeing to do that. We're going to be in the Dome under the arch in St. Louis on the 28th and 29th, and kids need to listen to you, because I listen to you talk about something that seems to be at the heart of a lot of people in the medical life and death. One of the Eastern religions, and I forget which one, says death only occurs when the last person you interacted with is gone, because it's those people that keep you and your ideas alive. You get involved with FIRST, you'll never die. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want you
I
to
started
do
a robotics
Rant.
competition called FIRST in
Rant about
1992. I wanted kids to be as excited about science and technology as I am. And today, 250,000 kids compete in our robotics competition, and I love checking out the wild robots there. But FIRST is about much more than the robots, or the costumes, or the crazy hair. These kids are learning discipline, teamwork, and self-respect. When people ask me, Dean, what's your greatest invention? I say, step into the arena. It's right here.
2 minutes.
Dean has one more thing.
Yeah, no, this is by request. We were talking in New York, and he did a 2-minute rant, and I think it's worthwhile for him just to do it now, real quick.
This is the result of my making an innocent statement, again, that if you misunderstand the problem, you're unlikely to solve it. And back when everybody was fighting over how much they're going to hit, frankly, the pharmaceutical giants and the medical products giants, because of their outrageous costs, I said, okay, you're a smart guy and you love data and presenting data. And I said to Richard, how much money did the entire pharmaceutical industry take in last year? And the answer is $275 billion, which one might argue is a lot of money, which it is, $275 billion. And I said, Richard, what do you think that includes? All the vaccinations. So nobody gets smallpox, nobody gets polio. What else? Well, all the cures for every disease you ever had, the cures. And sadly, since there are some we couldn't vaccinate you against, prevent, and there are some that we can't cure, it also includes the chronic, every day to keep you alive, whether it's diabetes or heart disease, every drug everybody needs for prevention, for cure, and for chronic treatment. It's $275 billion. And I said, before we go figuring out whether we have a crisis there or not, let's just compare that to a few other numbers, which he surprisingly didn't have on the top of his head. What did Americans pay without health insurance or government subsidies? What did Americans pay, this is all 2008 numbers, I believe, for tobacco in that year? $88 billion. Well, but that's smaller, although. What did they pay for alcohol, drinking alcohol? $91 billion. Well, even add the two of them together, it's still smaller. What did we pay in that year for soft drinks? Not that they cause any particular problem, but it's all discretionary spending in the richest country in the world, and the answer is $121 billion. That's bigger. What did we pay as a country in that year supporting professional sports? $465 billion. You add those three numbers together, and it's 3 times the entire outlay for all the miracles of all the pharmaceutical giants on the planet. We don't seem to think we have a crisis in professional sports, but we want to whine and complain about our hopeless and hapless situation. Until people decide that they're willing to pay for things that have value, until they decide to get involved in their own health care, it's not going to serve us well to let our politicians pander to everybody, whether they're theoreticrats or winocrats or whatever they are. Why don't all the people in the country start looking at real data, looking at real options, making important decisions about their own health care and their kids' health care, and the world would be a better place.
But one other number, it's the number of families divided into what the health care budget.
So right now, in this year, the number was $2.6 trillion. I've seen numbers as low as about 2.35, and some a little higher, because some things are questionably healthcare. But you don't have to be much of a mathematician to say we have a little under 300 million people in the country. If you divide 2.6 billion by a little under 300 million, that comes down to $8,667 per year per person at the current spend rate for health care. If the average family is 4.2 people, $8,667 times 4.2, 8,000 times, a little under $40,000 per year. That says the average family of 4, before they have any money for anything else. And by the way, even the other numbers I gave you, that wasn't food and shelter, that was luxuries, arguably some of which are destructive. But if the average family in the United States now presumably is consuming $40,000 a year, and the number's growing faster than any other metric, way faster than income, and since most families couldn't possibly pay that, it means all the other families are paying some multiple of that. Which part of that makes it hard for people to understand it's unsustainable? It's not even sophisticated math. It's kind of like arithmetic with a little bit of maybe algebra. We ought to face these problems in some realistic way. We ought to have people just put real data down, deal with the truth.
It's basically nonsense, the numbers. If you look at the numbers, there are nonsense on the national debt, the part of the national debt that isn't shown, that even Tony Robbins told us, most of the national debt is not shown because it's not our debt. It's like Social Security and other things that aren't added to the debt. It's not possible to do the debt servicing in another couple years. It'll be more money than could possibly be paid into taxes. But more about that next year.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I was wrong. Sorry.